You say life is inherently insecure. Relax and embrace it. I love that because we all feel that way. We can't, and you talk about visualization. No matter how much I visualize, I can't get out of the fact that I'm feeling that way. So you might as well, when that fails, at least relax and embrace it.
I talk about when I first started reawakening my spiritual side in my early 20s, and people, a certain person that I met was giving me books that he thought I'd be interested to read. And so I read one first that said what you just mentioned, just don't try so hard, just go with the flow. And then I read another one that was a totally different philosophy the following week that said, you know, the reason we don't progress is because we don't try hard enough. So this was always a thing going back and forth in my consciousness until later on, as I got more serious about my spiritual side, I realized that I wasn't trying nearly hard enough.
There is that duality. We can't help it. It's the duality within ourselves that exists. We know what we should be doing, and yet we don't do it. And why we don't do it when we know we should, maybe one of the bigger mysteries outside of creation.
I believe that each of us comes here with a role to play, and that yes, there are those wonderful figures that are bigger than life on the landscape of history who influence the masses, you know, like a George Washington or a Martin Luther King or Mahatma Gandhi. But most of us, just regular people, have a job to do as well. And this thing that we're supposed to be working on is ourselves, improving ourselves so that we can contribute more light to the world than darkness. And that comes just from creating peace in your own life, from how you treat other people, how you treat your family. We need to create a harmonious individual life, and when we have millions of people doing that, multiply that by a few million, we can have a more peaceful world. It's not going to come through politicians or through the military. It's going to come through individuals changing themselves and adding a little more light to the world.
But as you say, too, in one of your stepping stones, it's not always a straight path.
No.
It's oftentimes a zigzag road to that realization, to that inner success.
Yes, Maxwell Maltz in his great book, Psycho-Cybernetics, talks about servo mechanisms and how guided missiles never fly from A to B, straight line. They start off and get off course a little bit, but there's a mechanism that corrects course, and they zigzag their way to the goal, and that's how we all do. If we're smart, we'll be clever. We'll be zigzagging our way. When we get a little off, we notice. Oh, let me get back. Let me remember what my goal is. Yes, this is what I really want. Oh, too far this way. Okay, let me come back, and we'll make it.
We're going to be dealing with philosophy throughout this conversation because the book really does, but at the same time we cannot escape the monkeys. So we've got to, for a few moments, at least let me get into the monkeys. Yes. The first thing that I didn't realize was Stephen Stills was supposed to be a monkey but couldn't cut the mustard. Yeah. So he recommended Peter Tork, and that's how it came together. Yeah. I find that again one of those stories that are like Jimi Hendrix opening up for the group. Stephen Stills couldn't cut it, but Peter Tork comes in.
He didn't do so bad on his own, did he?
No, not too bad, nor with Graham and Nash and Young.
Exactly.
So.
Yeah. They were buddies from Greenwich Village, the folk scene. While I was in New York with Tommy writing early hits in the early half of the '60s, he was a couple of miles away in Greenwich Village, trying to make it in the folk scene and learning his craft. And we never hooked up there, but we hooked up when he became one of the 4 actors that had to play a musical band.
And we say 4 actors that had to play a musical band, and we even know how much of a role, obviously, you and Tommy played in it, but I don't think people realize this, that at the zenith, at the absolute height of the Rolling Stones and the Beatles, this is 67 and 68. The Beatles disbanded in 69, so we know that this is at the height. The Monkees sold more albums than both the Stones and Beatles combined.
That's what they tell us. You know, Rhino Records bought all the Monkey Masters several years ago, and it's since been absorbed by the Warner Brothers record group. And they did research there that we found out some things we never knew, like in the monkey days, they didn't even certify records. The Recording Industry Association of America that certifies gold and platinum records, that was before they were doing that. So Rhino said, well, there's no records, there's no place to find out exactly how many they sold. So Harold Bronson from Rhino called and asked me, do you still have your statements from those days? So I went up in the attic and I pulled out all the statements, and he took a stack to the association, and they certified all of those early records as being multi-platinum and how many they sold. And we found out a lot when Rhino took over that we never knew. But we did know that it was a phenomenon that was much bigger than any of us expected.
Well, you know, I had Harold on the show, by the way, and one of the things we both talked about was how big of Monkey fans we both were. And again, it's hard for men to admit that. My son was telling me that he just saw January Jones, the co-star on Mad Men, standing in front of the Monkees star with a thing that says, "I still love you, Davy." So, you know, there's a lot of us in the closet, so to speak.
Well, the closet, it kind of became all right to come out of the closet about 20 years ago. But for those early years after they did that zoom up to the top and then peaked and zoomed down again, the show, I believe, was only on for 2 seasons. And so it was quick in and out. But for those first 10 years or so after that, it was kind of, oh, you don't want to admit you're a Monkey fan. After that, everybody was all right with it.
Now, you really do get into the spiritual life and the path, and a lot of it was from a book that you received, and then George Harrison and the Beatles actually also, pronounce his name so I don't get it wrong.
Paramahansa Yogananda. He wrote a book called Autobiography of a Yogi.
And that was the one that really seemed to grab you. And then, because of that, you realize you do have to make changes in order to reach the consciousness that you want and know is out there for you to attain.
Yes, it was a big life changer for me, and it's one of those books that I just felt every word was true, every word resonated with me. I didn't have to bend my mind around anything. I didn't know a lot of this information, but it just felt right. My friend Dennis Weaver, the actor, before he passed, used to say that there's a reason for that. He said that you could describe that as the mind's accepting what the soul has always known. And that's kind of it's a great line, isn't it?
Isn't that a great line? Because that to me is the hardest part, is for the mind to accept what deep down we know.
Yeah. So that was the experience I had when I read that book.
Say it again, Bobby. Say the line. No, I'm serious. I want the audience to hear it again.
That feeling of just knowing, just reading something or hearing something that seems just right in your heart, he said that can be explained as the mind accepting what the soul has always known.
Oh, wow.
He might have been quoting Yogananda, I'm not sure. But
I don't know. You know, by the way, I've misquoted so many people on this show. I once did one where I quoted my friend's father, and they said, no, Cicero said that. I said, okay, well, I heard it from my friend's father.
That's
so
right.
They said, it doesn't matter, but it's it's the thought that literally counts. One of the things in life that's difficult, and we all face, is expectations. And again, this is a chapter title, so I don't even want to, you don't even have to read that deep into it, but I can't help it. It does itself. And you say, floating above the shroud of my own expectations. If there's nothing, I mean, that's pain. I don't know how else to describe it. It's almost as painful, I don't want to say as a death or anything like that, but it's an inner pain.
That's right. It's something that's happened to me a few times in my life where just magically I've been able to get above those feelings of, well, what can I do, or, you know, I'm just one person or whatever. A few times, magically, I've been transported above that feeling to a feeling of, yes, there's more I can do, and let me just do my part and not worry about the rest.
Well, I know this line you stole from me, so I'm going to read it. I often rebel against doing the things I know would be beneficial for me. And I'm looking at that, I'm going, my God, I'd obviously be 30 pounds thinner if I already could take that into effect.
We talk about those things, and why do we do what we know we shouldn't? Why do we not do what we know we should? And it comes down to habit. That's really the bottom line, is we just get in these habits, and actually our brains get grooved in a certain way, and inertia carries us along, and it's the easy thing to do. It takes effort to change a habit. It takes effort to improve yourself.
But you know what you say, and this is, I think, the most important lesson of all: start right from where you are.
That's
because
right.
If you try to go back and try to figure out what it was, or think about, just start where you are.
Yeah.
And no matter how old you are,
yeah,
just start where you are, and you will become rejuvenated.
That's right. Because the moment you make up your mind to do something better for yourself or for somebody else, that's the moment where you can make a difference. And what you've done in the past really doesn't matter. There's nothing you can do about that. It's what you're doing right now. And I like the analogy of trying to take, you talked about going back and looking at the past, trying to take darkness out of a dark room by using a vacuum cleaner. That's not going to work. The only way you can take darkness out is to bring some light in. So you don't concentrate on any of the past stuff, any of the mistakes we've made. None of that is really going to be valuable, other than to pick yourself up, notice where you tripped so you don't do it again. But then you concentrate, okay, what's next?
Well, Bobby, what's next is our time is up.
Oh,
and bubblegum has never been so delicious or wise. And I want to end with your words. Looking back now, it's easy to recognize that every soul who crossed my path in this long journey has had something valuable to teach me. Thank you, Bobby, for crossing our path.
Such a pleasure being here. Thank you, Barry.
It's my pleasure, and thank you guys for joining us. Now, before Bobby leaves, I'd like to leave you with these few more words from psychedelic bubblegum. The world that we perceive around us is a product of what we create in our own minds. So we can change what we don't like, if not in the world, then certainly within ourselves. I'm Barry Kibrick. Between our minds and this huge world, there is a connection. And within us all, we have the ability to create a better product. Thank you, Bobby.
Thanks so much.
My pleasure.
Closed captioning for Between the Lines with Barry Kibrick is made possible by your generous contributions to KLCS Education Foundation. Thank you for your support. To connect with Barry, like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter at Barry Kibrick. And to contact Barry directly, watch past episodes of Between the Lines, and read his blog, visit us at barrykibrick.com.